G'day, I'm Bob Brown and I'm standing just south of Geelong at the entrance to the borough of Queenscliff. It's one of the most beautiful areas in Australia and it's got a wonderful lifestyle. But you see that fence over there? Coles, the mega supermarket chain, wants to put a huge shopping centre there to make money. In doing so, it's going to really destroy this wetland, which is adjacent to a world-recognised Ramsar wetland, specifically for a whole range of Australian bird life that should be left in peace, that should be reassured by these waterways and these beautiful lands being kept intact. The people of this region have signed petitions. They vote overwhelmingly to leave this as it is. It's so important for we human beings, for recreation, for our peace of mind, as well as for the birds, the mammals, the reptiles, the insects, the butterflies that depend upon this land staying as it is. Come on, Coles, don't make this environment go down, down, down. Lift the spirits of the people in this area who are well serviced for supermarkets and shopping, but want to keep this priceless piece of country for themselves, for us visitors, for future generations. Do the right thing, Coles. Take that fence down, take your cameras away, give this community the notice through consultation that you say you're having, and keep this area beautiful, natural and free of a massive supermarket. That's your job. Do the right thing.
And welcome to the Country Telegraph. I thought yesterday was frantic. Today it's just like, boy, am I looking forward to some Scottish medicine after this one. Let me tell you, I'm sure my next guest knows all about that. Being from Bendigo, I used to work at 3BO, and she's about my age too, or maybe a bit younger. Sorry about that. Maybe, because I'm only 32. Okay, I get the chuckling in the background. Now, the bush has always been a tough place to live, but we know that there are many, many compensations, many blessings, as they would say. However, in recent years, hard economic conditions, high debt levels, natural disasters, and the withdrawal of many essential services have hit communities hard. When huge projects such as renewable energy zones are rolled out with a dubious rationale, poor or meaningless consultation, and in some places compulsory acquisition of land, it can just snap individuals in half and split communities apart. In parts of Australia, primary production appears to be under attack. It is under attack. The people on the land are being attacked by government. Our guest is Anita Donlan, who lives in Bendigo and is passionate about small communities. Anita is the founder of Let's Get Rural, and that's a political, not at all interested in politics, not-for-profit, and it's purely focused on the mental well-being of rural communities. She absolutely loves the rural, the bush, the outback, what the people do for Australia is fully behind them. She is just an amazing person, and I've only been watching her podcast of late, and I have to tell you they are pretty damn good, and she works very hard. Now, Anita is based in Bendigo, celebrates 10 years of support and advocacy of 402 communities. Anita Donlan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. You're in my engine room today, so mind the mess at the back. I'm looking for some
Lordy
equipment.
Lord.
I'm looking for some production equipment. I know I've got a particular light, and I want it for Saturday night for when we go to Kalgoa. So that's our 403rd community.
Isn't that amazing? Tell me about these communities.
Well, we basically, Mike, it's very simple. We have our ear to the ground. So we are all volunteers, and our network is very, very vast. And when we hear of a community that is in need of a hand up, not a handout, could do with a little bit of a coming together, some laughs, and of course supporting the local footy club or pub or something like that, we become a local for the day or the night, and we come along and we do what we have to do, and that is bring people together for no other reason but for a night out, social interaction, and happy days. And we do all of that not through government funding, not through corporate funding. It's all because we run raffles, we have beautiful people that pay it forward, and it's just about mateship.
Tell me about the actual well-being, the mental well-being of those in the bush right now. I'm from the bush, from Mildura, from St Razia, further out than the big smoke of Mildura.
Yep.
And I can understand how farmers are really struggling, because, I mean, it's always been part and parcel of being on the land. You have good years, not so many, and you have plenty of bad years, plenty of those. But how are they coping now? Because not only are they under attack in many parts of Australia by the weather, they're also under attack by all sorts of uglies, in particular various governments, whether state or federal. How are they coping?
Well, throw in the fuel and the fertiliser issue. I'll only speak with how we're finding it, and they're not travelling all that well. The whole renewable energy push, the whole compulsory acquisition push, is really giving them a knocking around. And I just want to explain something. We don't talk mental health. Mental health is when you break your ankle and you need medical intervention. And unfortunately, there are some people in life that do need medical intervention for their mental health. Mental well-being is what we focus on. And that's like when you sprain your ankle and you just need to stay off your ankle, and I need to ring Mike and say, hey, it's rubbish day next Tuesday. I'm not able to limp out. Can you help me put it out? That's when something comes in from left of centre and basically will throw you off kilter. But what's happened here is it doesn't matter what postcode it is, we're hearing the same thing out in rural Victoria, and that is the bullying that is happening by the Victorian government. The compulsory acquisition side, I think, was the real clincher, because it was a clear indication of disrespect. It was a direct indication of a government saying, well, we don't care. We're just going to take it. You're going to say no? We're going to take it anyway. Mm. So that for anyone is very, very distressing. And it's impacting people in many different ways. They're socially, mentally, physically. But the unity that is out there, we all know that rural communities, they're just resilient. They're just, that marvellous word that didn't really exist until 20 years ago. They're just mates, people come together, and it is that mateship that is helping everyone get together and know that they're not the only ones.
It's pretty amazing if you think about it. And I find that more so than when I was on the land, that there's a great tyranny of distance, which is even bigger now. Hasn't changed really in kilometres, but the roads have got better in some cases. But the distance between, I suppose, the thought wavelengths. I mean, if you're looking at the way the rural communities and all these communities operate compared to what's happening in the city, Look at the policies from the city. The policies are to get votes. And if they can do it on the renewables and do it on climate change and so forth, they will, and they are. But if you look at reality and move to the bush, that's almost in complete opposite direction of what reality is. So reality in the bush is entirely different to the wish list of the city. How do we meld those two together?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, I think, Mike. And what we are doing on the 5th of July, we're hoping, big fingers crossed, that we're going to have lunch with a farmer at Pier 35 in Port Melbourne. Why did we choose Port Melbourne and that venue? Because it's overlooking the port. And so, of course, primary producers, if they produce a product, it may end up down at that port. But it's also about bringing the farmers into the city and encouraging city people to come in and actually have lunch with a farmer in a beautiful venue. It's going to be a gorgeous afternoon. And we stopped and I thought, how can we actually start bringing in city people to understand? Now, when I started to read out on our Let's Get Rural Facebook page, basically data from the government's, their own papers that we have summarised, we started to get a lot of support from city people. And city people were saying, well, how can we support? Short of them all going out to a farmer's paddock, which on a biosecurity level, that isn't a very good thing to do, we thought, let's bring the farmers into town. So that's what we're hoping. That's what we can start actually drawing that bridge, drawing that line in the sand and just saying to city people, they're here on the 5th of July. Come and work out exactly what's going on and thank a farmer. Look them in the eye, shake their hand and say, thank you for growing my food.
I often say that farmers need a hug and probably give a farmer a hug.
Exactly.
It is very tough and it's hard enough. We had citrus and my dad he was doing 2 jobs and he was working really hard and he had a magnificent crop. And he was very excited, all the flowers and stuff on the trees. It was going to be a beauty. Then he had a thunderstorm and then the hail. Yeah. And he said that God picked his entire crop in about 30 seconds. But you can cope with that because weather is going to be unpredictable. Not climate change, forget that. Weather is unpredictable, always has been. But when you get the ignorance and the lack of focus from government in particular, whether it's federal or state, towards the rural communities, then we have real problems, don't we?
It certainly is. And when a city person says, oh, the farmers are whinging again, I just
They do.
Wow, that is under the belt. But you're right. And what is happening is not, by their own papers, is not for the green energy for city people. It is for the data centres. And I think that is an extra kick in the guts to our farmers. They're being lied to. They're not only being disrespected, they're being lied to. And we're supposed to respect the Indigenous, the refugees, the LGBT and everything else. Hang on a minute. You've missed the biggest sector, and these are the people that grow our food so we can survive and we can move our country. And rural communities are the glue of any country. It's just bollocks. It's just bollocks.
I haven't heard that one. I have a friend who's an English guy, and he always would say bollocks.
Well, it's a nice way of saying something that I shouldn't be saying, but it's bollocks.
Well, you are from Bendigo, so we do have to temper you down a bit.
You know me too well, Mike.
Yeah, I know Bendigo very well. I did brekkie there.
Yes, you did.
It's a magnificent part of the world too, and I have to say it's very classy too. The only thing is you got Jacinta Allen hanging around.
Well, I'm actually in Jacinta's electorate, and I've got the kettle on, Jacinta. Come and knock on my door.
Tap. Do you think she knows?
I've got a yo-yo biscuit for you as well. I'll put you on the string.
Could you imagine to be like, oh, should I tap that? Yeah, what do you want? Oh, nothing. Just wrong house. See you later. But I don't actually. Well, we're on this subject. Okay, Jacinta Allen is on the nose. The Labor Party is on the nose. The government's on the nose. But it has been on the nose for a long time, and they keep getting re-elected. If we look at the opposition, okay, we have the Conservatives under Jess. What's her last name? I've forgotten her last name. Jess. And so she could be the next premier. she does remind me at times of Jaime out of Max Smart, of his daughter. Yeah, very stop-start. So not all that relaxed. I'm being quite cruel. But her policies aren't that dissimilar to that of the Labor Party when it comes to renewables. Then we look at One Nation, and they're not going to be strong enough to do a whole lot in Victoria in this election. So if we get a Conservative government this time, and if they can't do it this time, they're never going to get into power. If they win this time, where do you see Victoria being placed under Jess and also they're still going to work with the federal government, which is going to be pulling strings. So where do you think the changes will be between the Conservatives and what you have now?
Well, I will say that we are apolitical and we only care about the mental well-being, as you mentioned in the beginning. So this is my opinion, not Let's Get Rural's opinion. I see a coalition with the capabilities of actually taking office because of their stance that they have recently come out with and said that they will repeal it or they will stop the whole VicGrid scenario and make it a lot fairer for the farmers. But what I'm hearing, and I'm not endorsing her, so don't think that I am for a minute, Pauline Hanson's popularity, particularly in rural Victoria and those in the city areas who are aware of what's going on, I think will do okay out of the protest vote. Coming back to Jacinta, and again, this is my opinion, you walk around Bendigo and she's not liked. And when you start hearing unions talking against voting for Labor because of what's been going on, you know that there is shift. There's a shift and there's a change in the wind. So on a rural front, I'm hoping that the coalition will stick to what they have come out with in the last couple of days and said. But Pauline has come out all the time and said, no, get rid of it. We repeal it. We'll get rid of the whole net zero, leave Paris Agreement, and basically let our farmers feed us. So who knows?
Who knows? And that's why God created Scotch. If it helps come to a decision, may not be a good one, but there is a decision.
As long as people actually look at this for what it is and actually don't go doing stupid things on protest votes or anything like that. And I think this whole election is going to be based around, if we can do this the right way with our messaging, and there's Farmers Fight Back, there's all the other groups. If we can all start connecting with the cities, and because there's more disconnection in the cities than there are in rural communities, as we've mentioned, I think we'll be right.
I used to have a problem with the word rural, and when I worked at the bush stations, between cap city ones, the bush stations would always have the rural report, and I can say it now, but I used to have this almighty problem, so I would practice and practice and practice beforehand, just for one word. That's how dedicated I was.
There you go. Well, so you should. It's very worthy of being practiced and getting perfect.
It is. I would have got a box in the ears for my dad if I didn't do it properly. Tell me, if somebody wants to find out more about Let's Get Rural, how do they do that?
Rural. Let's Get Rural on Facebook is our main communication tool that we've got at the moment. But we also have 1,000 paddocks. So if anyone would like to come along to our lunch or enter our raffle to win $200 worth of fuel, that's where you can find it. People say, what's 1,000 paddocks? Well, just think of it like the Daffodil Day to the Cancer Council. 1,000 paddocks is our fundraiser to Let's Get Rural. Very fitting, I think.
Fantastic. And I do like your podcast too, by the way. They're very enjoyable. One day I'm sure you're going to get so excited your hair will catch fire. I look at it and go, well, the hair's still not flaming yet, but between the eyes you can see it.
Look, Jacinta and I, we go way back. I've run for the Liberal Party in the past, and we go way back. So, yeah.
There's another story over a few scotches. Anita Donlan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And here's a suggestion, and we'll do it. If you send us, do a little 30-seconder about all your activities, when they're on and whatever, we'll play it as a spot here. So the offer is there. Anything we can do to help the person on the land, and not just farmers. There are others on the land. They need help, and we need to give them a big hug
Can I just say, if there is anybody out there that needs to have a bit of a download or wants to have a bit of a laugh, just inbox us, because we've done over 1,800 welfare chats, and it's our inbox is open, as we say.
Okay, knock, knock. I mean, you'll see mine will be there, first one, help, no one loves me.
Yeah.
Anita, thank you so much for your time. This is
Thank
the
you.
Country Telegraph.
Well, I see that the government has approved the Warrnambool Energy Park, 144,800 truck movements, something like 4,000 over-dimensional vehicle movements, and something like 450,000 vehicle movements during the construction phase for Warrnambool Energy Park. This has not been fully considered. The infrastructure in rural and regional Australia will not survive. This is catastrophe for rural and regional roads. They're bad enough at the moment. The people that work for me, I think it's an occupational health and safety risk for them to move onto a Vic Roads road in the Wimmera, particularly the Warrnambool Birchip Road, the Warrnambool Dimboola Road, the Warrnambool Rainbow Road, all in catastrophic condition. I fear for the safety and the lives of my workers when I send them out on existing road infrastructure. You imagine what's going to happen after 450,000 vehicle movements, 144,800 truck movements. These roads will be annihilated, and I mean totally annihilated. The local council's interests haven't been considered. I feel that they haven't been funded appropriately to maintain and repair these roads. This sort of truck movements and the cumulative effect of other projects, and every single project is assessed independently on its own merits. The Cubico project in the Mallee, the Wimmera Plains project, the building of the transmission line, all these are on top of the 450,000 vehicle movements for the Warrnambool Energy Park. We must evaluate the cumulative impact of all these projects. We must know what that's going to be. The government's refusing to examine the cumulative impacts, and this is a really significant issue for the Wimmera, for the regional shires, Horsham City Council, Yarriambiack Shire, Bull Oak Shire, Gannawarra. All these shires are going to be negatively impacted. We've got to have a better system. We've got to be able to have transparency and community consultation. This government is not doing it. Talk about respect. There is no respect from Lily D'Ambrosio, Sonia Kilkenny, Jacinta Allen, this lunatic, authoritarian, totalitarian government that's running Victoria. There absolutely will be accountability. There will be people that will say, we need to have a proper process. There is no proper process. This has got to change. Thank you very much. It's Ross Johns here from the Wimmera Mallee Environmental and Agricultural Protection Association. Enjoy your day.
Our next guest, Julian Gillespie, is a former Australian barrister and the principal author of Secession by Western Australia, recognised for his COVID research, advocacy and legal challenges against vaccine approvals. He's led efforts to protect public health and medical autonomy through landmark cases and community education. For this project, he focuses on constitutional design, institutional integrity, if there is any, and practical nation-building reforms. He writes on governance, resource stewardship, and the civic case for a stronger, sovereign Western Australian. Julian, thanks for joining me.
Hello, Mike. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has indeed. We were under another banner then, and were hated by all governments. Probably still are.
Yes.
Haven't got a Christmas card for a long time. Tell me about the origins of the book and its main objectives.
Okay, well, just so everyone's clear, this is a real book. It's a very hefty 400 odd pages. And myself and, of course, my co-authors, Professor G.G. Foster, Senior Economist Michael Baker, and Professor Ian Brighthope, spent considerable time putting the 15 chapters together. The origins of the book actually arises from COVID. When we entered 2024, and it was shortly after we put in, it was a massive 769-page submission to the Australian Senate when they were seeking submissions on a proposed Royal Commission into COVID. The outcome of that Senate committee was favourable, but then, of course, the still current Prime Minister, Albanese, knocked everything on the head and took the inquiry internally into his own office. And so it was quite an atrocious outcome, yet there were just an enormous quantity of submissions, but it was all ignored. And so it was clear to us and the rest of our legal team, that was obviously, as you mentioned, our focus, the legal challenges, was that as the Australian government had got away with the COVID sham, what it had, the devastation that it had wrought by offering fiscal carrots to all the states to do its bidding, and that is, vaccine mandates and locking people in their houses and locking them out of their jobs and their work. And so, look, I didn't want to go away too dejected. It's like, what did we learn? How did we stop the federal government from doing this again? And so that involved hitting the road and doing a lot of research, essentially in WA. And that's where I was drawn for a solution. And the solution did come in Western Australia because it became clear, and it was something that I'd parked in the back of my legal mind years and years ago and needed to be revived, was that Western Australia had sought to secede from the Commonwealth. They'd voted. Western Australians voted at a referendum in 1933 to leave. And it was only due to a not very clear interpretation of law back then that the law didn't allow for the wishes of the Western Australian people to go to full-on secession and back out. So we've looked at the legal question once again. And it's like, well, is secession a possibility now? And it clearly is. The law's clarified itself in the last 100 years. There's been successive pieces of legislation come in. And so now the people of Western Australia who have not stopped talking about secession, let's be clear about that, have not stopped talking about it. It comes up in conversations just so casually all the time. They wish to just have nothing further to do with East Coast governments, really. It's not that they're not Australian. It's just they're sick and tired of the federal governance layer, which has only been a financial burden to them ever since they were pushed into federation in 1901 or shortly afterwards. So it's one thing to come up with a solution and show legally, yes, it's very easy for Western Australians to leave the Commonwealth now, but that leaves the question, well, what do you do with the new, what's the source of revenue for the new nation of Western Australia? What sort of currency is required? What sort of infrastructure is required to build up its own economy without any, without any relationship with the Commonwealth layer anymore? All business would be conducted as usual between the East Coast and the West Coast, or private and public companies. It's just when you remove that Commonwealth layer that was imposed in 1901. And so the book goes into 15 chapters of setting up a new defence structure, a new agriculture, a new aquaculture, so that you can increase farming. And the result of it is, Mike, is that you have the ability to remove income tax from individuals, from companies, turn it into a global tax-free zone, free trade zone, and no longer have to deal with any one of those 13 plus Commonwealth taxes, which have only been a constant burden to Australians, where we've got an $800 billion a year money pit, which is the federal government, which Australians have been asked to put good money after bad into, and it's not producing any results. It's producing a lot of Canberra bureaucratic millionaires, but it's not producing any results for the punters in the street in all the states and territories. So that's the origin of the book.
I'm just thinking though, because if that happened in my lifetime, that would probably be, I mean, forget all the other ugly things that have happened, COVID and stuff like that, but for WA to secede from the rest of Australia, and even though I think on one hand it makes sense, on the other hand it's just sort of like, nah, there's South Australia, then you drive to Western Australia, which is a state, not another country. So to my way of thinking, I probably don't see it happening, but I'm sure there are those out there that see it happening and says it can happen. What about the legalities to make it happen?
Yeah, the legalities, that was the very first thing that I had to satisfy myself about as a former barrister before we pushed on with 15 chapters, writing 15 chapters, and that was the very first chapter that I wrote. It's currently chapter 2, but it was just to clarify how easy is it now. And so if you had a new independence party come into power in the state of Western Australia and essentially sweep out Liberal and Labor, and if the mandate was, for the election of a new independence party, that they would take the state towards secession bill, it's that simple. Like if if an independence party was swept into power by an overwhelming majority, that would be in and of itself a referendum on secession by the Western Australian people. And all that would be required would be a secession bill presented to the Parliament of Western Australia, simply saying, goodbye Commonwealth, we are no longer a partner in that federation. And that's importantly something that can be done under the Australian Constitution. A lot of people recite what's in the preamble, the word indissoluble, but that preamble's not binding. Our High Court of Australia is very, very clear on that point. It's aspirational. In other words, it taken into court to contest the issue. The High Court would say, oh, we see that word indissoluble in the preamble, but that doesn't bind us in the interpretation. What we do see is Clause 6, which defines the states for the time being as members of the Commonwealth. And so for the time being they're words that matter legally. They are legally binding words. And so any common sense interpretation of for the time being obviously encapsulates the idea that you can back out, for the time being and until that time's finished, until a state says we no longer like the deal. We're actually bleeding, and in fact Western Australia is bleeding $39 billion a year. That's what it gives to the East Coast. And it says we're finished with this deal because it's no longer in our financial interest. We want to keep that $39 billion in the state, and we've got enough resource wealth here that if we properly exploit it, which the federal government is failing to do as well, for all Australians for that matter, with resources all around the country, if we put up, it's just an imaginary line, Mike, an international border that is between, the Australian nation and the Western Australian nation, we can conduct our affairs better. Now, it means that Australians can easily cross that border, just like you see the free thoroughfare all across Europe under the European Union. They're recognised as a friendly nation. Everyone's Australian on the same continent of dirt. It's just there's a different administrative structure. And where you say, I can't see it, well, a lot of people couldn't see the federation at the end of the 1800s. Like the very idea of a federation, a Commonwealth, just didn't make any sense to a lot of people. Everyone was happy in their own in their own states and the independence of their own states because they had a type of sovereignty and they weren't having to pay into some sort of collective idea or collective model or collective financial model. And so what you're used to is, just over a century of federation thinking, because you grew up in the federation. But we're saying, well, let's get back to the pre-1901 model. And should the people of Western Australia decide to take their own path, which is what people up in Alberta, for instance, are very close to doing, and withdraw themselves out of the Commonwealth, well, then everyone will wake up a day after that secession bill is passed through the Western Australian Parliament, and they'll say, well, there's a new reality. There's a new governance that's occurring on that side of the country. It no longer has to pay money to the Commonwealth government. The Commonwealth government has no longer any authority there. And it's only the East Coast that is subjecting themselves to that financial burden and the over-regulation that comes from that third Commonwealth layer.
We have run out of time. I do apologise. We only have an hour, but I'm going to invite you back again, if you don't mind, and get you and Gigi on and give you a full hour to go through it, and that's not enough either. But it's better than a 10 or a 15-minute get together, as you would understand. But just quickly, to get the momentum to get things rolling, as they would say, what is required?
We really need a new independence party, because the Liberal and Labor parties, state Labor parties in Western Australia, they've been perpetuating, keeping Western Australians bound to the federal model, and keeping Western Australians paying income tax when they should have stopped paying income tax about 2 decades ago. So currently there's work afoot for creating a new independence party with clean-skinned candidates to field in all of the seats across Western Australia. Once it, rises and becomes a real thing and starts, hitting the hustings, as they say, and people are aware of the new party and the choice, well then, hopefully we'll see state Liberal and Labor in Western Australia get a proper run for their money. And if they don't succeed, well then secessions clearly will be on the agenda.
If somebody wants to get hold of the book, Julian, Secession, which we've had next to your magnificent head, and by the way, you're not in Perth, because I hear the chooks going in the background. You're in Bali at the moment. And partially jealous too, I have to say, but that's another story. If somebody wants to get hold of the book or find out more or have a conversation with one of the authors, how do they do that?
Well, the simplest way, of course, is just to Google Secession by Western Australia. Otherwise, go to our website, which is www.secessionwabook.shop. And there we've got summaries of all the chapters and the ways you can purchase it, and some of our multimedia and media to date on the book's release.
Yeah, I still find it really hard to get my head around this, because I'm a creature of habit in many cases, which is not great. But I've been told I need to get my head out of the sand. But to have WA as another country, you wouldn't call it WA, it'd be called probably, what would you call it, Australia? Or you wouldn't have
New Western Australia. Everyone would still feel Australian, but we'd just be the western side of the continent, that's all.
Yeah. Can I come over if you do that? I'd love to get away from what we have at the moment.
Of course you can, Mike. It'd be a pleasure.
I'll bring a bottle of Plonk. How's that? Julian Gillespie, thank you so much for your time. This is the Country Telegraph.
Mount Isa, as we can feel the pressure, these cowboys can harness the energy, they can feel the excitement. Think about what's going through this cowboy's mind.
The gate opens and you see the bull coming out. Honestly, I just hear silence. Seven different emotions go through you in about 10 seconds, and then they go on repeat.
This is when it hits another level of energy.
To be a rodeo cowboy, you want a bit of gravel in your gut.
Typical cowboy, obviously half mad.
Check the Science. An interesting new Check the Science issue has popped up recently in the cattle industry. And no, it's not vegetation management or greenhouse regulations or methane regulations or nitrogen emissions, etc. There's too many etceteras. It's buffel grass. Whether it should be declared a weed, as the federal government seems to be threatening. Now, this is something which has generally got two sides to the argument. First, buffel is absolutely critical to the grazing industry, especially in Queensland and Northern Territory. But it's also an introduced species, and in some places is causing environmental problems in national parks and the like. It takes over from spinifex, and there's an argument that it causes very hot fires which can kill trees. But groups like AgForce have drawn a line in the sand and argue strongly that to declare their main pasture type for the whole dryland area of their industry as a weed would be an absolute disaster for the cattle industry. After all, graziers grow grass, actually. Cattle are really just secondary. For them, this would be not much different to, for, say, the sugar industry having sugarcane declared a weed. They may as well declare cattle a weed. But on the other hand, weeds are probably the biggest threat facing the environment. And ironically, most graziers, weeds are a constant headache, so they get that argument. But one argument against declaring buffalo as weed is that it's pretty well pointless. I mean, it's already out. It's been in Australia for 150 years, so there's no hope that we're going to get rid of it. So why not focus on controlling it in the reserves in those areas and let the graziers get on with growing it? And it's not like there aren't a zillion other weeds that are definite environmental hazard and are not used by one of Australia's biggest industries. I mean, can't we pick on one of those, or do we just hate the cattle producers? Of all the weeds and all the pests in all of Australia, why are we picking on buffalo? It's a bit strange. But you know, these are actually details. They're important details. But the main thing here is that the decision is certainly going to be made on the politics, and any science is likely to come from university lecturers, probably with an activist streak, or science organisations with very little quality assurance systems. So for the moment, there's no chance that a high quality science will underpin the ultimate decisions. So like many other issues facing rural Australia, we have to fix the broken science problem. That's why we need Check the Science. That's why we're asking the Queensland Government to do Check the Science in the Queensland Productivity Commission. Please sign the petition. And if you're in the grazing industry, please get behind Check the Science.
And welcome back to the Country Telegraph. Our next guest is CEO of Speedbird Weather and Climate Proprietary Limited. Professor Stone is an internationally recognised meteorologist, climatologist, and is an emeritus professor at the University of Southern Queensland. Now, Roger specialised in applied climate science, seasonal forecasting, and agricultural drought preparedness. First of all, Roger, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
Tell me about your first question. Is it going to rain tomorrow?
Depends where you are, Mike. Depends where you are.
On the Goldie.
You're in Dalby?
And on the Gold Coast.
On the Gold Coast. Yes, well, overnight I think it's the main rain. This is a nice little pattern we're getting through. Probably not much follow-up rain, though, for folks out there on the Downs and other places. So get what you can out of it, because there's probably not much war behind it.
Can you ask God if he could just move the rain elsewhere? Because I have enough of it. I can't even wash my car. Mention the word barbecue. There it is. It's going to rain again. Tell me about your company, Speedbird, or Speedbird Weather, and what it does, Roger.
Yeah, we do two main things. One is we do a lot of work for the engineering companies, people that are building dams and weirs and construction sort of work. Most of those folk don't want rain, so they have to plan their operations around a period where they can get drier conditions and see if they can harness their resources, change the rosters, the work rosters and so on, ahead of any major rain events or potential rain events. So there's certain types of patterns that people building dams or doing work on dams want, which is plenty of dry weather, and they want that to occur before the wet weather returns. So it's all about timing. So that's part of the work we do. The other work we do a lot of work for courts. We do a lot of severe weather attribution stuff for major disasters around the country, insurance claims, that sort of stuff. That's the main work, yeah.
And look, there's been a fair bit of talk, and I have to admit that I'm not a great when it comes to weather. I can tell if it's going to rain by looking at the clouds. We used to have a weather guy, another iteration of this, and he would say, be careful of the weather, it's the only weather you've got. And I used to think, well, that used to make sense and appreciate it too.
Yeah.
But we're talking a bit about, we often hear little murmurings about El Nino. And there's been some, if you're a budding Stephen King writer looking for a bit of a horror story, you'd be following what people are saying is going to happen to us in regards to El Nino. Can you put us just at rest and make sure I can sleep well at night?
Yeah, well, we'll do our best there, Mike, for your sleep patterns. The El Nino is where you get warmer than normal water out there in the central and eastern Pacific, and then contrasting with that, we get cooler water around the Australian coast. It's been going on. We've known about them anyway since Lieutenant Cook came out here. He started recording. He was on a scientific expedition, so they've been around for hundreds and thousands of years. These El Nino events. That's the first thing, and they largely control our season-to-season weather, which is where we specialise, and that's whether we're going to have dry winter, springs, and so on. They usually tend to last for about a year. Sometimes they can go longer. And they're the major cause of, not the only one, they're the major cause of the droughts and so on that we get in Australia. Not the only one, and not everyone produces a drought. And then that flips over the other side, something called La Nina, which is the other side of the coin, where you get the opposite sort of conditions in the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, I have to say. So it's a major sort of global pattern that then tends to influence Australia at different times of the year. They tend to form right about now, exactly now actually. There's probably, this one's developing as we speak out there in the Pacific Ocean. It might have just started to develop over the last couple of weeks, in fact. Sometimes they produce quite severe droughts, but not always. And that's what we've got at the moment. But I know the international press particularly, they say Heart's carrying on about a super El Nino and so on. It's sometimes they have quite an impact on Australia, but certainly not all the time. So that's about where it stands.
So basically, it is as has been for the last 100 years.
Yeah, it's a similar sort of patterns we get. Yeah, there's been roughly the same periods of El Nino going. 65, 66, 77, 78. 82, 83 was a pretty big one. They tend to run from autumn to autumn. That's why I'm saying at the moment this one's just about formed. It will probably last until autumn of next year, and we'll be getting a return back to pretty good late autumn winter rain. That's what usually happens. So 82, 83, 2002, 2003 is another one. We had a 4 or 5 year one between 91 and 95, 96, which sometimes you get these protracted events. But as I say, you can trace these back thousands of years actually. The Incas and the Aztecs and so on knew about them in South America. The Spanish settlers in South America found out about them right back in the 1500s. So they're not new.
And very important for those in the land, because you need to, and that's why, I mean, it's interesting. I think there's two great pastimes in Australia. One's going to the Boxing Day test in Melbourne. The other is giving the Bureau of Meteorology a bit of a bash around the head. Look, it's raining again. They didn't tell us that. But the farmers are or those in the land are very reliant on accurate forecast.
Yeah.
And probably one job I would hate is an air controller and a meteorologist, because you're going to get attacked whether you like it or not.
I used to be both.
Did you? And you look pretty normal.
Yeah, it's a world of hard knocks, though, as you know. So.
Have you developed any twitches? That's another story. Sorry about that. A Scotch will fix that too. If somebody wants to find out more about your company and yourself, how do they do that?
We've got a website, of course, Speedbird Weather and Climate. And we're particularly interested in companies and large enterprises, farming companies, as well as engineering, construction companies, and so on. They tend to enjoy using our work for critical decisions. This is all about decision making. This is all about critical sort of multi-million-dollar enterprises, really, where this stuff really becomes important. So, it's certainly if they have an interest in this sort of thing as well. But we have to work closely with them to make it worthwhile. So, thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Professor Roger Stone. This is the Country Telegraph.
You haven't been to the races until you've been to the Boolyah Camel Races. It's the big one, the Melbourne Cup of Camel Racing. Bring your camping gear and light up the campfire, or spoil yourself with a luxury glamping stay. There'll be great live music, plus 2 days of the best camel racing action in Australia. Check out bulyahcamelraces.com.au.
The wet weather continues across eastern Australia with the risk of severe thunderstorms and flooding rain. My name is Sarah and I'll be taking you through the latest information with this evolving weather event. Now, over the last 24 hours until 9 a.m. this morning, there was significant rainfall across southeastern and eastern Australia, with 40 up to around 80 millimetres recorded across all 5 states. Now, this is being driven by tropical moisture that's been drawn down over eastern Australia, and it's now interacting with a number of low pressure troughs. We do have a severe weather warning that is current across northeastern parts of Tasmania at the moment for heavy rainfall that may lead to flash flooding, where 6-hourly rainfall totals are possible between 30 to 50 millimetres. Now, we are expecting that heavy rainfall to start to ease later this evening. However, an initial minor flood warning has been issued for the South Esk River. Today, thunderstorms are possible across a really broad area of eastern Australia, but just focusing in on the yellow area where severe thunderstorms are possible, across central parts of Queensland and the southern interior, heavy rainfall, damaging winds or large hail are all possible. Now, across this northern section of New South Wales, however, heavy rainfall is our main concern that may lead to flash flooding. Now, there's already a number of storms that are going at the moment and we're keeping a really close eye on those, and if they start to show any signs of being severe, then severe thunderstorm warnings will be issued. And we're also expecting it to be a really active night tonight, continuing into the early hours of tomorrow morning, where the area of severe storms will move into southeastern parts of Queensland. So for Brisbane and the Gold Coast, there is a risk of a severe thunderstorm bringing heavy rainfall, damaging winds or large hail from tomorrow morning, continuing into the afternoon and evening. But the most likely area for severe thunderstorms is across the mid-north coast and the Hunter, with heavy rainfall being our main concern. Now, we also have a severe weather warning that's been issued today for heavy rainfall to develop about the Barrington tops of New South Wales from tomorrow, that's Thursday, continuing into the early hours of Friday morning. Now, within this warning area, 6-hourly rainfall totals between 40 to 70 millimetres are possible, with isolated totals in excess of that, even up to 95 millimetres. So we have issued a flood watch for the potential for minor flooding across the Hunter district and for parts of the mid-north coast as well, with this heavy rainfall, with the most likely period or risk period for this minor flooding to occur being Thursday night and continuing into Friday morning. So taking a look at this weather event moving through, we've got this low pressure system near Tasmania with onshore winds being brought onto that northeastern area, driving that heavy rainfall, and a low pressure system is expected to develop over southern parts of Queensland this afternoon. Now, moving into tomorrow, that low pressure system will move towards the southeast, dragging the weather into southeast Queensland, but as well clockwise winds around the low will bring an onshore flow with the heavy rainfall most likely about those windward slopes and coasts. On Friday, that low pressure system will continue moving away from the mainland, dragging with it the worst of the weather. However, severe thunderstorms will still be possible about the north coast and adjacent land areas of New South Wales. So how much rainfall are we talking about? Between now all the way through until Friday, there's the potential across southeastern parts of Queensland for 25 up to 100 millimetres in those hit and miss thunderstorms. But for northeast New South Wales, it's a much more widespread rain event through there, with that rain band really intensifying, bringing the potential for 100 to in excess of 150 millimetres. And also just eastern parts of Tasmania, the potential of 50 to 100 millimetres. Community impacts include the potential for flash and riverine flooding with all this rain, as well as dangerous driving conditions in both the wet weather, but also the damaging winds or the large hail. But it has to be said that this is also very welcomed rainfall for a lot of communities within the agricultural area that have seen a very dry start to autumn. So if you live across eastern parts of the country, now's a really good time to stay up to date with our latest forecasts and warnings via the Bureau website, app and social media. Otherwise, we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.
And that's it for the Country Telegraph. Nice to have your company. Thank you so much for being part of the last hour. Tomorrow we'll do the same. Hopefully not as chaotic, but I have to say it was a magnificent show. And all the guests, thank you so much for your time and your consideration. Until tomorrow, have a good one. Be kind to your neighbours, be kind to yourself. This is the Country Telegraph.